Hi everyone, I'm going to be doing a quick tutorial on Genesis lesson planning. You can refer to this at any time if you want to go back and learn, or if you need to follow along, feel free to pause the video as you find things. But my goal today is kind of a secondary PD on top of the one that we offered during convocation and in-service to allow you to play around with Lesson Planner, to get used to it, to see other people using it and stuff like that. So first things first, we need to find where to go in Lesson Planner. Two ways to do it. One, you can click on this module box in the top left-hand corner. Honestly, I didn't know this existed until I learned about Lesson Planner, and you can click on Lesson Planner here. Another way to do it, perhaps the way that I learned how to do it, is on this menu bar up here. You can click on Next, and Lesson Planner will be the only option. So however you choose to get there, there you go. So once you're in Lesson Planner, let me introduce you to a few things you need to get used to. First, the tab Lesson Books over here. Lesson Books is where we're going to be setting up our unit. More on that in a moment. It's also where you're going to create your lessons. It's also where you can see lessons from other people in the school. If you add them as your friends, this calls it Lesson Pals, but essentially you have to add someone for them to be able to see your course. I'll go through that as well. What else do we have in Lesson Books? You can also link your books together, although I wouldn't worry about that so much. But essentially, this is where you're going to see all of your quote-unquote classes, which Genesis calls lesson books, where you're going to see your unit plans and where you can create lesson plans. Next up is calendar. I just want to introduce all of the different options first. Calendar is this, I call this the on-course view, right? This is where I can see all of my courses. This is where I can see my plans. If you've never played with a Google Lesson Planner, or a Genesis Lesson Planner, then yours will be blank. But I went ahead and put in a couple of weeks worth of lesson plans just for me, but also for the sake of this video. Right now, we are looking at this calendar by book, meaning we are looking at it by the course. On-course was like this, right? So I've got my Latin American Studies course, I've got my AP World History course, I've got my CP and my honors. There's another view if you like. It's called View Calendar by Date. You can access it by clicking on the drop-down on the left-hand side of the screen, going to View Calendar by Date. And instead of having the lesson books on the left, it's just everything that's happening on that day. Now, mine's organized in period order, so I've got my period 1 course, then my AP, and so on and so forth. But then these are all of my lessons. The darker color, you can change the colors on this. Yours is probably going to be an off beigey kind of color. This is our unit, and this lighter color, I made the lesson plan. So I can click on this to see my lesson plan, as you can see like this. But anyway, more on that later. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is calendar view. There's also setup, which we're going to go to. This is where we're going to set up our basic preferences. This is where you can add quote-unquote lesson pals. If I invite someone to be my lesson pal, they can see my plans. And if they invite me to be their lesson pal, I can see their plans. You'll need to do this if you are co-teaching this year. You can also play around with other tools up here, but I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. So my goal today is to teach you guys how to create unit plans, how to create lesson plans, what it looks like, and then go from there. So Genesis Lesson Planner, it's a bit clunky, it's Genesis-like, but one thing that you have to consider is it's like an old-fashioned notebook, right? An old-fashioned lesson book that you have to do in paper. Imagine that the book itself is this, what we're looking at, the Genesis Lesson Planner screen. Each tab in the book, meaning each class where you're going to put your lesson plans, pretend that is a unit plan, right? You have to have a unit plan. And to be more realistic, Genesis makes you have a lesson plan, a unit plan before you can create lessons. Here's what I recommend, and here's what the other Google coaches recommend that you do. We heavily recommend that you just have one, because you need to have one in there. I know at the elementary level, you don't really use unit plans so much, right? You have your curriculum, that's fine. If you are comfortable with Genesis Lesson Planner and you want to create multiple units, go ahead, but I'm not going to. What I did is I created one unit. Up in the high school, we use unit summaries. We use Unit by Design, UBD. So I copy pasted the link from my Google Drive and put it in there. If you're going to be using curriculum, you can copy and paste the curriculum and put it in there. Or just to get set up, just leave it blank for now and go back and fix it once we have access to curriculum again. But you need to have a unit before you can create lessons. In a notebook metaphor, that makes sense, right? I can't create lesson plans until I have my unit sorted, or I can't fill out paper until it goes in the right section. So you need to create a unit plan. Luckily for you, Genesis has already created one for each of your courses. It's probably just going to say Unit Plan 1. You can leave it that way if you like. You don't have to get fancy. You can change the colors here. This is very much like changing the colors of assignments when we set up our gradebooks for the beginning of the year. This should be 0, for you, and if you have not played with Genesis Lesson Planner yet, because you don't have any lessons in here and you don't have any days where those lessons are assigned. When you do fill out the unit, this is where you're going to see a quick summary of it. You can print it out as a PDF. You can make copies of it, and then you can edit it. To modify the unit plan, in fact, to do anything in this, you need to click on that paper and pencil like I just did. You can name the unit if you want. You can change the font color, give it background. You can do all kinds of stuff. But like I said, mine is just a link to my unit, which I have on Google. This is acceptable. Administration has said this is fine. So if you have your unit plan on Google somewhere, just share that link, right? Get the link, put it in here, click on save. I have to impress upon you, saving is really important because it's not Google, right? We need to save everything we do as we are doing it. So make sure that you save as you go. You can never oversave, so feel free to do that. Excellent. So let's go back to lesson books. It automatically takes us to the list book, right? These are our courses, or what Genesis calls our lesson books. You're going to have one for each course that you teach. I have 2 sections of AP World, which is why I have 2. Somebody, I imagine Giancarlo or Charlie, has gone in and linked them so that when I create plans for one, it will create plans for the other as well, which is really nice. And then this is a semester course, which is why it appears twice for me. If you are teaching rotation, you're going to have each one of your rotation sections in here as well. And it may look clunky, but it is what it is. Now, when I go to my calendar, however, you're only going to see one of my Latin American studies. Let me show you. Not both of them, because Genesis knows when the course is active. The course is not active in Genesis yet. And so if we go to view calendar by book, you'll be able to see it's only the one Latin American studies course. Both of them don't show up. So if you're teaching rotation, you may only see the one. You may see all of them. You can hide them if you want, but I would just leave them be. Okay, so back to lesson books. You've got unit plans. They're created. They're already in the system. If you don't want to mess with that for right now, then leave it because it already exists. So you can use the one that Genesis has created for you. But what's really important here are your lesson plans. You can create lesson plans by clicking on the lesson plan tab right here. I have several already. But to create a lesson, you click on this button here, add a new lesson to unit, and we're going to make one together. After you make it, it's going to give it a basic title, lesson plan, whichever one in the list that it is. I highly recommend that you change this because if you have 20 different lesson plans, you're never going to remember which one is which. So give it a name of something that you are going to remember. You can leave the start date for now, all right? Once you assign it a start date, it is going to automatically populate on your calendar. So if you're just putting in some plans, but you're not ready to assign them yet because you don't know if you're going to get to it in a certain time, you can leave that blank for now. Days, I'm going to show you about once we go to edit. Share means that this lesson plan can be searched. Other people can look for it. I could also upload it to a public library of lesson plans if I want to. I don't find that necessary for now, but that also exists. This is to see it in PDF, but of course the most important is to modify that lesson plan. So go ahead and create a new lesson, name it something, doesn't matter what it is for now, and then go into modify lesson plan, that paper and pencil icon. Once we're in here, we're looking at our lesson planning screen. This is like an on course when we click on the white box and the pop-up comes up and we're about to do our lesson plan, right? You can rename it here if you haven't done so already. Template. Let me briefly go over this and then I'm going to make a case for why you should stick on single box lesson plan. Yours may say template lesson plan, whatever it is. If it has the word single box here, this is the one I recommend that you use. This is the one that looks like on course. This is your giant single box where everything goes. Remember, we used to do, essential question, essential understanding, the material, everything kind of goes in this one box, and that's perfectly acceptable. Giancarlo has also created for us 2 other boxes, modifications, which will be great for special ed staff, and reflections, a very clear-cut place where we can put our lesson plan reflections. On-course didn't really have something like that, and it was a bit clunky, right? But reflections we are to use for our lesson plan reflections. So that's the single box lesson plan. The other template we have is the Genesis default. This reminds me very much of Teacher College, right? To view the change, of course, I have to click Save Lesson because you have to save everything to see changes. This one has a bit more to it. You've got your themes, your skills, your interdisciplinary connections, tech integration equipment, goals and objectives, learning activities, differentiation, resources, right? So this one is a little bit more separated out. If this is all you and you like to organize this way, then go ahead and use it. But I know that I plan on using the single box lesson plan, which is more like on course and a little bit more basic and suits me just fine. Let me quickly show you an example of how I've already created a lesson plan using this template. I'll go with the geography one. Modify lesson plan just to show you what it looks like. I've created my lesson plan called geography. I've assigned the amount of days that this lesson plan will take. This lesson plan is going to take me 4 days, right? I try to compound my lessons to be several days worth. The maximum, by the way, is 7 days. It doesn't let you plan a lesson for more than 7 days, but I like to mix mine up so that one lesson plan I'm working on for a few days, and they're a little bit more complex than just a single day thing. So in here, I've just got everything that I used to have an on-course, right? I've got my objectives, I've got my lesson with all the different days and what I'm doing in each day. I've got my assessments, my homework is in here as well. So you can make this whatever you want. You can do the exact same format you used to do before. We're not, asking you to change the way that you do lesson plans, just where you're going to be putting those lesson plans. So once you've created a stack of lesson plans, right, it's time to assign them. Now you can switch between your lesson books as well, which are your courses, right? And you can create your lesson plans within each course. Just like I've done here. Let's stick with our Latin American Studies one though. So we created this lesson plan and we need to assign it to a week. For the sake of this demonstration, because I've already assigned a few weeks worth, let's make sure that I assign one that doesn't get in the way of another lesson I've made. So I've already created a mummy archaeology lesson. It's going to start on Monday the 17th and it's going to last for 4 days. Now, you'll notice, if you can squint and see here, 919 is not represented. It goes 917, 918, 919, and 920, or 920 and 921. Let me show you why. One of the great things about Genesis Lesson Planner is that because it's Genesis, it already knows when we have days off. It already knows when holidays exist. So if I scan to next week, for example, it knows that we don't have school on Monday the 10th. And so even though I've said that my lesson plans are 4 or 5 days, it will automatically skip those holidays. Right, which is really nice. So I don't have to remember an on-course to say, oh, right, we don't have school on Friday. It will automatically do that for us. And if you say the lesson is 5 or 6 days, it will automatically skip any holidays, which is kind of nice. So what we want to do right now is I've already kind of built lesson plans in, right? But I want to put that lesson plan that we just made, and I'm going to start that on Monday the 24th. Okay, so let's go back and find that lesson plan. You can go to Lesson Books, Lesson Plans. It was right here, lesson plan 4. And we are going to be starting this lesson on Monday the 24th. Excellent. Save that lesson. It's a 1-day lesson plan. It's only going to happen for the 1 day. You can change the days in Edit Course if you click on this pencil and paper. From days from 1 up to 7, right? But mine's just a 1-day lesson plan, so I'm going to leave it like that. Now when I go back to my calendar, I've made my lesson plan. I've assigned a date for that lesson plan. Boom, there it is, right? It exists on the Monday the 24th. I can move this lesson plan. Let's say I don't actually get to this until Tuesday because I had something else going on. I know up in the high school, at least, there's always last minute things and kids are being pulled out for this and that and mentor field trips. So I want to move this lesson, right? I can click on move, click on the day, and it's moved over. No problems. So if you don't get to that lesson that day, you don't have to delete all this kind of stuff. You can just move it to the day that you plan on starting it. I can also edit my lesson plan from the screen, so I can go back to editing it. If, let's say, it's going to be several days instead of 1, I can change that here. I can delete the lesson plan. However, please be advised, if I delete this lesson plan, it will also delete it from the lesson plan list that we were looking at before. Or I can copy this lesson plan and then paste it somewhere else. You'll notice on this view, we've got paste at the bottom. So if I copy this, I can paste it. Now, see when I said before that it makes you have a unit plan before you can create a lesson, here's where we're seeing that, right? I've got this lesson that I want to paste, but it makes me pick a unit. If you only have 1 unit, that's not really so much a problem, all right? So you can copy it, you can paste that lesson, but remember, when we delete lessons, it may delete it from the lesson books. Let's take a look. So I've deleted lesson plan 4. Is it still going to be there? No. You see that? Because I've deleted it from the calendar, it no longer exists. So please, if you are going to be assigning a lesson plan to your calendar, do not delete it off your calendar because it will delete it here. All you have to do to unassign it is just get rid of this. All right? Mummy archaeology, I had that for the 3rd week of school. So now when I go to my calendar, it was supposed to be assigned for this week. It's not there anymore because I unassigned it. So please do not get in the habit of deleting things because you will be deleting your plans and there is no way to get them back. You can, however, unassign them from the weeks. So do not delete them. Go to lesson books, go to lesson plans, and just unassign it from a week. And then when you're ready to teach it again, you can pick the date that you're going to start teaching on and it will repopulate into the calendar. All right. I know there's a lot of clicking along. I really hope that you feel free to kind of pause as you're going, but I just want to be able to show you in real time what everything looks like. So we've created a unit plan. You can leave it as it is. You know what? You can even leave it blank for now until you get more comfortable with this system. But the most important thing is the lesson plans. We need to create our lesson plans so that administration can see them, right? But that's the important part. How do we post plans? Because OnCourse had a nifty button that we could click on. Well, we can look at it here. If you're on the view calendar by book mode in calendar, you can only post from calendar, all right? If you're in the view calendar by book mode, you can post them individually by class by clicking on this post button here, or you can click on this green check mark and it will submit all of my lessons for review. Once I click this, I'm going to do it now. So sorry, administrators, if you're getting a bunch of emails. I can submit all of my lessons. And let's say I decide that I need to unsubmit them. I can't click there, but I can click where it says submitted. I can uncheck the box that says submit to review. And then as you'll notice, it will go back to saying post. So I can unsubmit them this way. Yes, it is entirely clunky that I have to do this class by class. However, so far this is the only way that any of the Google coaches have found for unsubmitting assignments. Right? So you kind of have to go in individually and do it like this. So it's possible if you need to do this. However, you can also edit and change things while it's submitted. So you may not need to really unsubmit if you make a mistake. You could just fix that mistake really quickly wherever it is and go from there. If you are viewing the calendar by date, the button for submitting is up here on the left. Submit plans for review. You submit it, it submits all 5 done. There's no way to unsubmit or to manually change submission from this screen. It cannot be done. So if for any reason you need to unsubmit, you need to go back to view calendar by book and unsubmit from there. Okay. The best way to learn this, honestly, is just to play around with it. You'll be switching back between lesson books and calendar view pretty frequently. Again, when you click on lesson books, you're going to see all of your classes. You can assign, I don't think I actually went over this with you, but you can assign colors to each of your books to make things more colorful. If you have a specific set of standards, you can pick those standards from here. They're going to be the NJCCCS standards. If you teach several classes, or rather, if you teach several standards within the same class, you can always search for other standards, but you should, if it's relevant, pick the one standard that is applicable to you. Clicking on the display tab will display it on your calendar. This might be helpful for elementary staff. I reckon that you guys are looking at about 20 different things right here. It's really obnoxious. It's ugly. I understand that. You can choose whether or not you want to display or not display them on the calendar. So if, for instance, you are teaching a rotation course and all of them are popping up on your calendar and you don't want to see them all right now, just the one you're currently teaching, you can choose whether or not you want to display them by clicking on this radio button here. And then this is just a summary. How many days of lessons have I got planned for this course? Theoretically, by the end of the year, it should be all 180, right? How many units have I got for this course? How many lessons have I built for that course? And configuring the lesson book. Unit plans we already talked about. Lesson plans done, right? This is where you create your lessons. You can assign lessons here. You can also create lessons from the calendar screen. You'll see a button that says create. But because it's so easy to delete from the calendar screen, I actually recommend creating and assigning your lesson plans from this screen. Because if you delete something from the calendar screen, remember, it's gone for good. So I would get in the habit of actually coming here to create your lessons. And one final thing I want to go over with you guys. Go to setup. It's this third tab over. You're going to see something called lesson power requests. This is how you share your lessons with other teachers. So this is a one-way relationship. If I share my lessons with Neil Thompson, Neil can see my lessons, but I necessarily cannot see his. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to share mine now with somebody. To do that, I click on this drop down, and every single person in this district is going to be here. That may be a bit annoying, but every person in this district is here. So know their name, scroll down, find who you want to look at. Alex and I will be teaching world history together, so I'm going to add her, and sends lesson power request. Now, this screen has changed a little bit. It says when I sent her a lesson power request, I can get rid of this request if I want. When Alex logs in and goes to lesson power requests, she's going to see something here. And it says lesson power request you have received. It's going to say Beard, Kelly, K Beard, the date that I sent it. And then she's going to choose whether or not she wants to accept my request, ignore my request, or reject my request. If she accepts it, she can see my plans, not the other way around. So if you and your co-teacher need to see each other's, you need to add each other. Once you've added somebody else, you can click on lesson books, browse books. We haven't actually looked at this yet. And not only can I see all of my books, but I can see the books of people who have shared their plans with me. If I am a special ed teacher or a co-teacher, here's how I'm going to check my co-teacher's plans and then modify them from there. Mr. Thompson has plans for period 1, so I'm going to view his lesson for period 1. Now, he's got 4 unit plans because he's an overachiever. He's got his first lesson. I'm going to click on this to view that lesson. Here's his week 1 lesson. Now, let's say that I am his co-teacher and I need to take his plans and I need to modify them. I'm going to copy his lesson plan. I'm going to choose which lesson book it goes into, right? You would click LCP if you were in that course as well. So choose the book that you're going to copy that course to. Pick the unit it's going to belong to, because Genesis is a real stickler for having a unit. So if you only have one, you don't have to worry about it. You can either choose to keep the start date where he's teaching it. If you are the special ed teacher, that makes sense. Or if you are working together, like Alex and I are going to be working on world history, and I want to teach what she's teaching, but not until next week, I can change when I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that because I want to show you where this goes. So I'm going to copy Neil's week 1 lesson. Remember that he called it week 1 into my Latin American studies book. Now, if I've just taken a lesson plan, where is that lesson plan going to go? Right? I'm going to go to lesson books. I'm going to go to lesson plans. And if I've done this properly, there you go. Neil's week 1 lesson plan is now under my group of lesson plans. I've copied it. It's mine. I'm taking it. And then I can assign it whenever I want. If I am the special ed teacher, right, I'm going to assign this for the same day that my co-teacher is going to do it. I'm going to go into edit here, and I'm going to put my modifications in the modifications box. This is a nice way to kind of copy each other's units and then be able to create modifications. So if you are a special ed teacher doing ICR, this is where I recommend that you do that. You copy your co-teacher's lessons, and then you create the modifications here. So that's a real basic overview. I just wanted to show you the real basic stuff to get you set up. I highly encourage that you play around. You go to lesson books, you can create your unit plans. I recommend just having the one for now. You can see your lesson plans and create them here. Remember, once you delete a lesson plan, it's gone forever. Okay, so I highly recommend you don't delete lesson plans. You can always just not assign them. You can check your calendar. This is our on-course view. You can look at it by book, like on-course, or you can look at it by date. I haven't decided which one I like better yet, actually. I think I'll probably switch back and forth between the two. If you want to see an individual day's lesson plan, like this is annoying and you don't want to have to keep clicking on things, you just want to see the things that you've written, you can click on this blue hyperlink right here for daily view. And under daily view, you can see the day. So here's my Latin American studies one, here's my world history one, here's my CP history one, so on and so forth. And you can go back and forth from here. To leave daily view, you click on the link again.